everyone. We are so excited. This is our very first live webinar sponsored by Global Immersion. They are allowing us to use their Zoom account so that we can test this technology. And we're so grateful for them so that we can try this out. This is our first live webinar series to kick us off for April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So we'll be having dialogue all throughout every Wednesday of April to talk about issues of sexual violence and how we as leaders can combat it. We'll hear from mental health professionals and also from survivors and from some of our program staff on the ground in Kenya and Zambia. Today with me, I have my most fabulous operations and development directors and managers. I have Teresa, who is our ops person out in Kenya, and then I have Phoebe, who's our ops person in Zambia, and I'm so excited to introduce you both to our community abroad. And if you are tuning in, feel free to use the chat window and say, hey, holler from where you're coming from so that we know where you're coming from. Okay, I see you, April. Thanks for waving. So you can feel free to use the chat window to connect with each other. There's a lot of folks from Kenya, Zambia, and the States. So it's really cool to see how everyone's just coming together for this really important conversation. And then towards the end of the webinar, we'll open it up for Q&A. So you can use the Q&A button to ask any questions that you have throughout the session, and then we'll address them towards the end. So welcome again, everyone who's coming in. We are from Freely and Hope. My name is Nicole, and I'm the International Director of Freely and Hope. Our mission is to equip survivors and advocates to lead in ending the cycle of sexual violence, and we focus on Kenya and Zambia. And so that is why today we have two of our leaders from Kenya and Zambia who will be sharing with us some of their perspective, especially in this time and season where we're all experiencing a really hard place. And so we wanted to call this webinar Finding Hope in Hard Places. In our work, we've had to find hope in hard places on a daily basis. And the fact that now we are internationally experiencing a hard place, we wanted to have a conversation on how we can continue to find hope together. So I'm going to start with Phoebe. As we think about some of this crisis that we're experiencing globally, what is giving you hope in this time?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nicole. I think for me, what has given me hope is the support that we have internally, our Freely and Hope community, first of all. We're receiving so much support, both from the three offices, that is the US, the Zambian office, the Kenyan office. So that's giving me hope because it's making me feel like we are in this together. So it's the kind of support that personally I'm receiving. So it's the friends, it's also the Freely and Hope family that's giving me hope in this period.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited that you could join this webinar. Freely and Hope is excited for all the conversations that we'll be having. I think in this season, I have found a lot of hope in the beauty that has come out of so much pain and brokenness. We've connected with each other in ways that we didn't even know that we could before. We have found it in ourselves to love and be compassionate with each other in a bigger way than we have done before. So that has given me a lot of hope. And when I think about the commitment that our community continues to have to fight violence, to stay united, to support each other, that gives me hope that we will come out of this victorious. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think many of our donors know that we just launched our programs in Zambia this year, and we're only 3 months into the year, and then now this crisis hit. So it's like, oh my God, how do we create a community of solidarity and support and hope in the midst of this crisis, now just launching a completely new place? And so we've had to really rely on technology such as this so that we can connect. And like Teresa said, we are connecting in ways that we never thought we could before. So it's really interesting that we've had to be creative. And it's also giving us a lot of life as we find ways to connect deeper than we would have before if we had this physical space to do so. So I'm going to transition into, as we talk about hope in hard places, as many of you know, our work is rooted in working with issues of sexual violence and injustice and the trauma that comes out of that. And we do really intentional work to support our survivors of sexual violence to ensure that they have everything that they need to find healing. And so as our work is often a hard place, we want to kind of explore how is the work a hard place, but also how globally we're experiencing hard places. And so I'll start with Teresa. What are some of the hard places that you have had to encounter in this work?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. So like everyone else in the world, we've experienced a lot of fear, excuse me, in this season. And beyond the fear of COVID-19, there's tangible fear for us that our community could be exposed to violence that we've worked so hard to fight. And with the government directives to have all schools closed, our girls are now home. And businesses have been greatly affected, which means that their parents are struggling that much harder to put food on the table for their families. And our greatest fear has been seeing our girls exposed to unsafe work that could predispose them to violence, to trauma, and just trying to think of ways that we can support them now that we're not meeting with them physically. That's been really, really hard. And also being very aware that there's a lot of there's a mental health impact that COVID-19 is coming with, and because we're not physically present for them, then we've been afraid that, how we've wondered, how are we going to be present for them? How can we support them through this season?
Yeah, and to add to that, in Kenya, a lot of our girls come from communities where they had been forced into prostitution in their high school age. And so now that high schools are closed, and we work with boarding schools, safe boarding schools in Kenya, we have had to move them back home, which exposes them to the violence of prostitution in their neighborhood. Phoebe, what are some of the things that we're seeing in Zambia?
I think there are a lot of similarities with there are a lot of similarities with the Kenyan context and the Zambian context. So the whole context is that we're working with survivors of sexual violence. Some of them, the perpetrators, are still in their communities. So when we take them to a boarding school, which is far away from school, we're taking them from that situation. So most of the time, we've had to navigate how can we still keep some of those girls who are feeling unsafe in their communities back in the communities, because they had to come out of school early. So we've had to start strategizing on how can we ensure that they are still safe. Some of them, the sexual violence happened in their homes, so they have to go back into their homes. So we have to also navigate that and just find a way to help to ensure that they are safe. So there's the fear that they'll be triggered back again. There's a fear that they'll still, by seeing the perpetrators either in the communities or in their homes. So one of the things that we are doing is to ensure that we are monitoring the situation very carefully and ensuring that we find alternatives if they can't stay in their communities. What are the other options that we can remove them from the situation? So the hard place right now is ensuring that we are protecting them from the virus, but we're also protecting them from the trauma that some of them experienced before Feeling Hope came in. So ensuring that they're getting the mental health services that they're supposed to be getting. They are also we're also supporting them through academics. We're also supporting them through any other support that we can give them to ensure that they are still safe, they're still thriving, and also they're not going back to, like Teresa said, some of them have to work. They're not going back to do the work instead of studying. So Feeling Hope has also been very helpful in that in this time they were provided with some essentials, a food basket, but also like personal effects so that they do not have to go back to work for those things because they came back early from school. So those are some of the things that we are navigating right now.
Yeah, something that we experience a little bit more in Zambia than in Kenya, I've seen, is the gang violence. And there's a lot more just random violent attacks that happen in our community in Zambia. And so with that, there's that physical danger of being home more frequently than usual that we're also trying to guide against. So this is all still a work in progress, and we're all still kind of navigating the daily changes that COVID is happening within both countries. And so what we are doing in Zambia is we are thinking about having weekly academic gatherings for all of our girls to come together to one safe place, learn from a private tutor. So at least we have a touch point with them every week. And then we would also have our social worker do calls to all of the girls and our therapist do calls to all the girls on a regular basis so that we have multiple touch points throughout the week, even if we can't convene physically as much as before. And then same in Kenya, what we're doing for both countries is we've been providing food baskets for the entire family. So again, as both Teresa and Phoebe address, it's so that we can ideally protect the girl child from doing unnecessary work, because being a girl and being raised in these communities, the girls are expected to be the breadwinners. And so when they're home, it's like, oh, you're home, go to the market and sell these donuts. Or you're home, like, you better start working in the streets, otherwise we have no food to eat. And so we want to provide the food to ideally prevent the girls from going back to the streets unnecessarily. I think another hard place for me has been that I was actually, before things really hit, I was on my way to Nairobi. And when everything started to escalate, I had a chat with this team and I was like, things are escalating. We don't know what's going on. I don't know if I need to go to Kenya now, because if I left sooner, then there was more likelihood that I would be able to get in through the borders. So I'm thinking about changing my trip like the next day, so I can leave sooner. And Teresa had the insight to say, actually, don't come, not because of COVID, but because of the rise of anti-Chinese sentiment and xenophobia that has resulted as a result of the COVID scare. So Teresa, can you speak a little bit more about that? Like, what is that looking like in our context, and how does that affect, I guess, the perception of non-Kenyans?
Yeah, so there's been very serious stigma and xenophobia. Initially, what happened is everyone just thought that it's, this thing is Chinese. And so when our government allowed a plane to land from China, it was like people declared war against Chinese people. And there was actually a man that was brutally assaulted in one of the communities that we work in. So when that happened, instinctively, I just felt I don't want to be in a place where, we're in the community that we're trying to serve feels that we are a threat to them, and they become a threat to her well-being. That was really serious. And what we've seen happen is that has escalated to almost everyone that is not Black. And now it's worse because it's like stigma against anyone that has even gotten the infection. Like, we've had 2 suicide cases so far of people that were suspected to have the disease, and they were stigmatized by their families and their communities, and they committed suicide. So right now, that's something the government is trying to deal with, telling people, no, this is not a disease that is affecting a certain group of people, and it's not coming from a certain group of people. But the truth is that right now, it would have been such a serious risk for Nicole to be here. And so honestly, I must say I'm really grateful that she's safe in San Francisco for now.
For now, yeah. So after she told me that, I was like, okay, I have to listen to Teresa. So I diverted and I came back to San Francisco right in time. But I feel like that's been like the hardest place for me, because I can't do the work that I love in the places that I love so much as a result of this stigma. And so it just allows me to have empathy, I think, for other folks who are in that hard space where they physically can't be in places that they want to be. For example, people who suffer from mental health issues and depression. Being isolated even triggers that sense of depression or anxiety even more so. Or if they're living with a partner who might be abusive, they can't be at work, or they can't go to their friend's house. That is a higher form of safety for them. And so that just allows me to think of, how placement, like physical placement, can have an effect on all of us in how we navigate this violence. And so, as Teresa mentioned, like this fear that has been just really escalating in against people who have COVID or people who are non-African. How have we been able to kind of combat this fear within our own leadership so that it doesn't affect our community? Phoebe, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I think one of the things I think we've been speaking about it ever since we started having conversations around how are we going to respond to the crisis within our community was there hasn't been adequate information trickling down to the communities. So you would find that would have for Zambia we have daily updates on what is happening within Zambia, like confirmed cases of COVID, or we're talking about suspected cases. But then when you go into the communities, so we work in Tendere and Kalingalinga, those are high density places, like population wise, there are a lot of people. But then when you're talking to the ordinary person on the street there, they have no idea what was happening. I think for the past week, the information has reached them a bit, but also there's a lot of misconception about what it is and how you get it, how you take precautions. So I still feel like we're in that place where the information is not really reaching them. But then today I was in the community, was sensitizing the girls. So that's one of the things that we're doing. We have a program in Kalingalinga and Tendere where we reach to 70 plus girls. So what we said was that maybe let's start with our community, our own community, where we sensitize the girls. Of course, we are taking precautions. So we've broken down the 70 plus girls into smaller groups where every day 10 to 15 girls come in and we exercise all social distance and whatnot. But then I think our starting point has been to just break down what it is, first of all, how one gets it, how one should be treated, how one should protect themselves. So that's one of the things that we're doing. That's how we're responding to it, by just ensuring that the adequate information and correct information is reaching our communities.
Yeah, thanks for that, Phoebe. Very similar to what we're experiencing here. What I have found for me is that isolation is the one thing that escalates fear the most, because when you're alone with your TV set and you're listening or looking through social media, there's all these things being thrown at you. And so one of the things that I found very helpful for our community is connectedness, that we connect with each other and we hear what is going on with everyone, where they are, because the truth is this is affecting everyone. And so it's not helpful at this point to pinpoint or to apportion blame. And the other thing I have found is, like, information is really important. Getting the right kind of information, to be more specific, because right now there's all kind of information. And so that's something that our community has been doing that I have found very helpful, where we are saying what really is COVID-19, as Phoebe is saying, and disseminating this information to everyone in our community so that they know, what's the truth, what is the lie, and they can differentiate the two. And then finally is a continuous commitment to our work. And I think for us, it's to say there's never been a more important time to fight for justice than now, because everything that we fight against has escalated in light of COVID-19. And so just reiterating that in our community, that the way to rise above fear is to continue being committed to fight against the injustices in our community, including those that will come up as a result of COVID-19, and encouraging each other on a daily basis that's been really important, and it's been very helpful in overcoming all these fears that are coming our way.
Yeah, excellent. I think it because there's so much stress outside of us, we have to be mindful that we're protecting our own space, so that that external stress and anxiety that's coming from the news or from family members or people that we care about is not infiltrating into our own sense of leadership, so that we just become we start operating out of our own sense of fear, which might cause us to make decisions that aren't as helpful as they could possibly be. So I know, like for me, I've been at this work for 10 years, and I think the biggest learning curve for me is to really slow down and to not always be so active and trying to like combat all the injustices all overnight, but to realize that this is a very slow and steady process. And how do we, like you're saying, stay committed to the cause and the mission, so that we can continue to sustain for the long haul, and that we're not isolating ourselves in the process. And so I think in my own leadership, I've really learned, how do I hold this urgency and this need to be active and proactive in the decisions that we make as leaders, but also how do I hold compassion at the same time? So do you two feel like, do you feel, I guess, that sense of tension like I do? And if you do, how are you navigating holding both active and activity and compassion in the same space, especially in a time of crisis? I'll start with Phoebe.
I think it has been a learning point for me. For me, I think I was having I don't know who I was having a conversation with. I was saying it, for us, it was a bit, what's the word? It didn't feel real, like, because we weren't getting a lot of cases here. So it was the danger of it reaching Zambia was a bit far off until we started getting cases after cases. So it just dawned on me until someone close to me had a relative get it. And then I sat down and thought, so this thing is real. So that also, but that doesn't mean that I was not thinking about how is it affecting others. It just made me sit down and say, okay, so work-wise, professional-wise, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I have a work plan, I have what I have to do, but as a person myself, how am I looking, how am I thinking about my neighbor out there who's in a worse off situation? Say, I will give an example of, we are required to isolate, or we are required to not be in public so much. There are people who are unable to do that, because for them, they have to make a living on the street where there's a lot of people. So it made me feel, first of all, grateful for the situation that I am personally in, to say, okay, at least I am or what's the word? I am privileged to work from home. I can do my work without having to go in public so often. But it also just helped me to build a compassion around the work that I do, because it's community work. And I can't sit at home and say, oh, it's fine, we'll go when COVID ends, because our girls are in the community. We really have to be in the community. So it also made me think inward, to say I have to be a kind of leader who will be, as much as I want to panic and say, what will I do? I have to calm myself and say, I have to, as much as I have all the fear, I have all the panic, I have to take a deep breath and say, okay, I have to be calm in the midst of everything that's happening around, because there's a community that we're serving that needs to see me serve in a sort of calmness. I'm not taking panic into the community and telling them, oh, this thing, I need to project to the community that we are in this together. As much as your situation is really, really a situation where you can't avoid certain things that are a danger because of the situation we're in. We are in this together. I can support you as much as I'm able to. So I think that's the way that I'm responding to it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. Teresa?
Yeah, so one of the things I was sharing with this team is that I thrive on a very dependable future. Like, I depend on the future, and when this thing happened, we were asked to work from home 2 weeks before the biggest event that I had ever planned with Freeling Hope. And so it really shook me. And for the first week, I was struggling. Like, I was trying to do everything as if things were still normal. I was trying to get the same work done and push everyone to get their work done. And as you can imagine, I was failing terribly, and I was getting frustrated and, frustrating the team. And so for me, my starting place has been to be compassionate with myself, to realize that I have never been in this situation before. I have never led through such a situation before. I now have to handle so many dynamics. I have to handle the team. I have to handle homeschooling. I have to handle so many things all at once. And that as I extend that compassion to myself, I understand that my team also has to handle so many different things. And that the community that we serve has to handle way more things, as Phoebe has said, than we do. Our girls are in situations that are, drastically different from ours. And as I sit here and wonder about, oh, how will I get that project done, they're wondering about their next meal. And so being aware of what everyone in my community is dealing with has made me more compassionate, and has made me, have the position of trying to think, how do I help that person, live through this situation, and come out victorious, live through it with a smile, with peace, protected from any violence. That's the focus right now.
Yeah, and even as I'm like all the way in San Francisco right now, and I'm able to be with the community, it's these voices that continually remind me to hold that empathy, to hold compassion, to be okay with modifying my own schedule the way I see it, and it changes really difficult. But the more we can collaborate, the more we can have these types of conversations and be honest and open of how we're dealing with it, then I think that's how we can continue to build our sense of community and solidarity with each other in our diverse situations. And so I think that's an important practice for us as leaders to do for ourselves, and like keep an ear on what's happening on the ground so that we can practice empathy through our leadership. I want to remind everyone that the Q&A window is open, and so we're going to answer some questions from the audience very soon, and so feel free to type those in there. We'd love to hear from you. My next question is really related to that internal process. So as we've been talking about, how do we hold kind of that grace for ourselves and adaptability and change, and how do we experience it here so that we can extend it to others? And I think I've had so many failures where I'm trying to present myself a certain way in public, yet on the inside I am flipping out, right? And so I've learned, like, okay, if I want to present myself this way in public, then in private there needs to be some practices that I carry with me to strengthen my inner sense of peace, my inner sense of strength, whatever that may be, so that I can also exemplify peace and strength to those that I serve. So Teresa, for you, what has been able to support you in the best way so that you can support your team?
Yeah, so okay, so one of the things that happened to me when we started working from home is just that sense of suffocating, and I need to breathe. So something I have found very simple and helpful is taking daily walks, and just breathing, and they have evolved over time to become prayer walks. And it's interesting the things that you see when you allow yourself to see them, that I'm walking and I will see a little girl having to sell vegetables, and I'm reminded of what we do and why we do it. So that's been very helpful. And then also my daily meditation and prayer has really anchored me. And I will say it again, for me, connection is huge. Just making sure that every day I'm connected. I'm connected to people that um, I love, and to the community that we work with, and we're sharing authentically and supporting each other. That's been very helpful for me.
I think for me, I'll start by saying that before coming to work for Freeling Hope, so I joined Freeling Hope officially in December. I was there was a line between my professional work and who I am as a person. So even though I've worked in this field for a while, I've had to actually blend the two. So Freeling Hope has also helped me to come to a place where I have to acknowledge who I am, like acknowledge what is going on inside me first of all, be authentic with myself first before while I come into the space of serving others. So one of the things that I think that helps me is every time even in this situation, I have to acknowledge, like Teresa said, be graceful to yourself. So I have to acknowledge what I am feeling first of all. And I think one of the things that I've I had to accept and to actually speak out loud and say and acknowledge, say I have sometimes I get anxiety get the best of me, but I have learned to acknowledge that, to say, okay, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I can do about it. So coming into that space and saying, okay, this is what I have, and this is how I'm feeling about the situation, but and dealing with the situation, and also just look for ways that I can first of all deal with what's happening inside, then I also come into this space and get the support that I need, even from the team. When we have a meeting from the Freedom Hope community, they would say, so how are you doing? And I'll honestly say, this is how I'm feeling about this. And not be judged and say, oh, but you're a leader, you can't feel like that. So being authentic about how I'm feeling, being authentic about where I am, helps me to also deal with it, but and still be a leader at the same time. I think that's how I deal with it.
Yeah, that's real. And I think for me in my own leadership, it's taken me years to get to that point where I can be honest and vulnerable. And in making that switch, I think that's where true transformation within the heart can begin, as we share with people that we trust, and people that can really pour into our lives and into our leadership to help us and equip us to be the best leaders that we could possibly be. So as we think of how we can support ourselves better and like establish our own rhythms, what are some of the extra measures that we're doing for our staff and for our teams during this time? Let's start with Kenya.
Yeah, so the first place is we're being very intentional in the way we support our teams with their own personal needs, so that everyone is first of all comfortable. So making sure that everyone is still on, a full wage, and they have, we have graciously been given extra for food so that everyone stocks up right now. And also making sure that everyone has Wi-Fi at home to do the work that they need to do. They have whatever they need for transport, to avoid public transport, which is really congested here. So everyone is comfortable enough to be able to work and be productive at home. And then supporting each other and checking in on each other on a daily basis, making sure that the things that we used to do before, we can sustain them now, having daily devotionals where we support each other and we check on each other, pray over prayer requests, and share what we are each working on, and find ways to collaborate and support each other. Yeah.
And from Zambia?
I think for us, like Nicole mentioned, we are a new office, so we are just 3 months in. We had all these plans of finding office space, ensuring that the operations. So we have had to, on top of not having a physical office, we have had to also navigate how we're going to maintain the oneness throughout this, while we do not have like a lot of meetings, a lot of contacts. So on top of what Teresa said about the financial support of data, airtime, and we've actually have to come to check on each other every day to find out how we're doing, what we're supposed to be doing, to also help to talk with each other about how can we support each other. So you have this thing that you need to do, how can the team support support you. So we're still a work in progress, but I think we will get the rhythm, and we are trying as much as possible to continue with the operations, but also ensuring that everyone on the team is feeling cared for, by ensuring that we are listening to each other. If we ask, how are you doing, genuinely, and wanting to know how that person is doing and how they can be supported. I think that's some of the things that we're doing.
Yeah, we've had to do more of that because we're all experiencing an immense amount of pressure and stress, and the anxiety is manifesting in so many different ways. So we have, as both Teresa and Phoebe have mentioned, done the daily check-ins every morning, where we have a devotional together in the morning. And then a new thing we've also started is a weekly global staff call. So 16 staff members from 3 different countries all calling on to Zoom together. That's completely new for us, but it's also really beautiful to see how, even though we're separate across countries and across households, we can still share with each other. We meditate together on that call, and we also discuss some things that could be helpful in terms of how the organization can support them better, and also what other practices we've learned on the field that the different countries can learn from and implement to better support our scholars and our girls that are having a really difficult time too. Another thing that as this team, this leadership team has been talking a lot about, is how we need to rely on each other even more so in collaborating, in supporting and uplifting each other. Something that my leadership coach always tells me is that the wisdom is in the room. And so when you get the right people together in the room, the wisdom is always there to find the solutions that we need to pursue our mission better, to support our own sense of leadership, and to also support our communities better. So that's something that we've been really trying to recognize, is the wisdom that comes from the team, so that we can just have more touch points, I guess, so that we can rely on each other more so, and not feel like, okay, we're the leader, so therefore we need to dictate everything that comes down. It's more of a collaborative effort where we learn from each other. So my final question, and again, if anyone has questions, please put it in the chat window, in the Q&A window. How do you practice non-anxious leadership in times of stress? So kind of like how I shared before, there's a time in my role about almost 7 years ago, so I was only 3 years into this work, that the violence of the world was causing me to overfunction, to the point where I was doing everything all at once, trying to put perpetrators in prison, trying to support girls who are survivors of sexual violence, trying to do all these things all at once, that was neglecting my own sense of leadership, that my internal anxiety was manifested in very unhealthy ways, to the point where I was hospitalized in Zambia. And so practicing non-anxious presence and leadership in times of immense stress and community violence is something that I've been working on throughout the duration of my leadership. So I'll start with Phoebe. How have you been able to practice non-anxious leadership in this very stressful season?
I think it has been I'm a work in progress, so I don't have it yet. So one of the things that really affected me was, I am passionate about this work because of personal experiences. And the first time I had to work, first of all, on a rape case, it was so bad. I think I had a breakdown where I was not really, I was leading from personal experience as opposed to calmly handle the situation. So sometimes I lose my sense of, I have to be the calm person in this situation, and want to do everything to bring justice. So for me, I have to again, I have to look inside myself and have to deal with whatever that's personal in the situation. Say if I'm dealing with a girl who's been raped, or we didn't get justice because the case went to court and the perpetrator was not convicted. So I have to actually just, it's still hard. Like I said, I'm still a work in progress. So it's still hard because when you're passionate about the work and you want, like Nico said, you want the perpetrator to be in prison, you want justice to be served, and for you have a definition of what justice looks like, and you're not getting that justice. It's very discouraging most of the time. So this work is really hard because you have to, sometimes, most of the times, you have to deal with disappointment after disappointment, injustice after injustice. So you have to pick yourself up every time something doesn't go your way. So I've had to learn, and I'm still learning on how to navigate that, where my definition of justice and what I'm getting from the world helps. It's I have to push myself from that. So if I experience what I define as injustice, and have to pick myself up and say, okay, there should be justice for another person that will help. So I don't think I have a definite answer on whatever I have to do. So I'm still a work in progress, like I say. So it's most redefining what justice looks like. So if justice looked like I have to get every perpetrator in prison, and I'm not getting that, I think I'll be discouraged. So justice is also just being thankful and grateful for others. Maybe if the perpetrator didn't serve his term, is there healing for the survivor? Did we find any other help for the survivor? So that also encourages me to go on in the week, I think, most of the times.
Yeah, so it's a really difficult thing to do. And for me, I have found two things. One is our community of survivors is amazing. Survivors and advocates, they're amazing. And I have found that when I lean on their resilience, when I'm able to see and recognize their own resilience, because most of the pain that we carry as leaders, and most of the things that make us anxious have to do with that community that we are serving, with everyone that we're serving in our community. And yet many times we look and we see that they're resilient. They are so hopeful. Even in the midst of such, tremendous trauma, they have such beautiful dreams. And so for me, when I glean on that, I'm reminded that there's hope, and that I can afford to mess that up. I don't know how else to put it. I feel like if I'm anxious and if I act out of anxiety, then what am I communicating to they that are going through this pain, and yet they still have hope? So I remind myself every day, but that's still difficult. That's the truth. It's not easy. You don't always achieve it. And so for me, I have found that there's a place to be authentic, to be real, and to ask for help. I don't hold all wisdom. I don't hold all the answers. And there's such a beautiful community of people that have experience and that are willing to pour into our lives as leaders. Having a leadership coach, having a therapist, all those beautiful things that Freely in Hope has availed for us are such an anchor. Yeah.
Thank you. April has a question. Are there practices, both personally and as an organization, that you are taking now in the midst of COVID that you feel you will continue even after we have come through this virus? I'll start. I think for me, it's daily touch points with my team. I think because I travel so much, I'm just like doing whatever I'm doing, that I let the team kind of come to me when they need it. But I'm realizing that consistency is really key for me, just to remind myself of the work that we're doing, and that remind myself that I need community too in the midst of this. So those daily touch points. And second, personally, would be daily meditation. And I've been like saying I'm going to meditate every day for forever long, but it wasn't until this crisis that I realized how much I need to have a daily meditation practice. So every morning, that's something that I do. Phoebe?
I think I hope we continue the global meetings. I think in that space we learn so much from each other in terms of we talk about even though we think the experiences are the same, are similar, we learn different things. Say, for instance, the Zambian team will learn so much more from the Kenyan team and from the US perspective as well. So I hope that we continue that even after COVID is done and we are back to work as usual. But then also, I think this is the first time I have actively done meditation on my own. So I found that it also helps. Like, I would just do meditate even for 10 minutes and it helps calm me. It helps me give perspective of, so mostly the calm is what I get afterwards. So I think I will continue that even after this situation is over.
Yeah, I agree with Phoebe. It's been extremely refreshing, exciting to connect with the entire global team. And so I'm hoping that that won't end. And I think also for me and also for the team it's been such an wonderful time of intentional learning. Like when you're in a space where there's so much that you don't know. I don't know how to lead at this time. I don't know how to manage expenses. Then you're continually looking for opportunities to learn. And I haven't watched so many webinars and read so much in such a long time. So I want to continue learning as a leader.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't know what's going on. We're all trying to figure it out together, right? So that's why also like this call and inviting all of you is really important so we can continue to learn from each other's experiences. Gloria had a question. Have the teams been able to support or secure girls who were safer in school than at home during this time? And we did allude to that before, but I'll just answer quickly. Yes, we're doing the best we can. Some of our girls are staying in a safe hostel that we've partnered with. So for the girls that cannot go home because it is unsafe, we've relocated them to that hostel where one of our Freely and Hope fellows is kind of overseeing them. And then every girl gets multiple touch points per week through our social worker and also through our therapist. And there's also touch points for the parents weekly as well. So we're doing the best that we can in terms of the phone calls and ensuring that we're reducing any barriers that a girl might have to directly come to us. So we're also considering the little tiny Nokia phones from back in the day, just so that they have a way of communicating with us in case of emergency and if their parents are not available. So those are some things that we're working on the ground. Eric had a question. Are there additional needs for Freely and Hope during this time of the global health crisis, and how can we be helpful? So I'm assuming we being the global Freely and Hope community of supporters. Zambia, what would be helpful for Zambia?
Ooh, we are dealing with young ladies. So like we mentioned, most of them have to work for essentials. So it will be very helpful if just even the basics, the sanitary towels, the hygiene products. So yeah, those things. That's off of the top of my head. Those are the things I'm thinking about, like everyday basics for the girl. Like they don't. A packet. I think a packet of sanitary towels must be about $1 or $2 right now. So imagine a girl who has to work for that, and then they are not even for the scholars we're providing for that, but we have 70 plus girls who we need to provide for. So it will be very helpful if we can get help from that around that.
Yeah, so as Stevie mentioned earlier too, we this week we're doing health and sanitation trainings for our girls group that's over 80 girls. So we're doing it in increments of 15. So we're having 15 people come into a large hall and we're teaching them the health and sanitation practices due to COVID, hand washing, and we're giving them hand sanitizer, soap, and pads. So if anyone would like to support that, reach out to us. That whole thing is happening this week. And as Phoebe said, we're also giving all of our scholars, both in Kenya and in Zambia, the support through the food baskets, and also pads are included in that. And so that is coming to $50 a month. We already distributed for March, and so depending on how long this lasts, we're going to need $50 a month for 27 of our scholars on a monthly basis. So we're hoping to work with a organization to support in funding that. So you should hear back from Freely and Hope in about 3 weeks if we get that organizational grant. But obviously you can always support in other ways by going through our website and donating there. In Kenya, is there anything else that you feel would be helpful to you?
Yeah, so in this season, our university girls, as Nicole mentioned, either at the hostel or at home. And one of the things that we're really looking into is mentorship for them. They've all indicated interest in getting, mentors that can work this journey with them. And so we just want to encourage anyone, especially anyone that's in Kenya, that will be interested in being a mentor to one of our girls. You can reach out to us on email, and we can link you up with one of our girls.
Yeah, thank you. We are specifying Kenyan mentors for this. So all the Kenyans out there that are tuning in, email us. You can email Teresa directly, teresa@freelyandhope.org, and let her know that you're interested in that. Final question from Rebecca. What are your dreams for yourself and for our world during this time? How do you hope we emerge from this? So for me, I think the dream for myself and for our world is that we can really be more unified in distancing, physical distancing, that the physical distancing will force us to be united in ways that we've never been united before. And so I think as we consider and also anticipate how we will emerge, my hope is that I can emerge more, unified in our common solidarity, and um, and establishing stronger practices of healing for ourselves and our leadership, as we also hope to share that sense of healing with our community. I know that COVID has really exposed a lot of the socioeconomic disparities of our world. And so in seeing that kind of blow up in our faces, my hope is that organizations, even small ones like ours and larger corporations, can do more to ensure that there's socioeconomic justice across the spectrums, from hierarchy to the day laborers, and how we really treat those who are now becoming the heroes of our world, the nurses, the doctors, the grocery store attendants, the security guards, the people who clean the streets. Those are actually the heroes that we're seeing in our world right now. And I hope that we can continue to uplift people regardless of their socioeconomic standard, and provide better ways for them to receive support such as healthcare and job sustainability. Teresa.
Yeah, so a dream for myself is actually really tied to what we've been talking about, is that I would lead from a place of rest, a place of calm, a place of compassion, and that will, know, it will be like an aroma that goes through our entire community, that in a time when these injustices that have been highlighted or illuminated by COVID-19 would be addressed. And particularly here in Kenya, it's extremely painful to see the things that our government is rightfully advocating for, but without consideration for everyone that cannot even afford it for themselves. So I pray that as Nicole has mentioned, that our health system will be fixed, that our public transport system will be fixed, that we will, work to create employment for more people, that informal settlements will be addressed, and proper housing will be provided for more people. Those are the things that have been highlighted. We will emerge out of this, as Nicole has said, more unified, knowing that we're all human, and the thing that affects someone in San Francisco affects someone in Kenya. That's what this thing has come to teach us, and that we are united in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. Phoebe?
I think everything that you both said, to lead from a point of compassion, to have more compassion for myself and for the community around me, the people I serve, and then for the world around me. I think one of the things that I hope that after this, the lesson learned that we'll get from this is that we'll plan better as a country in terms of how we respond to health emergencies, how we respond to economic emergencies, because that's one of the things. I think we have a lot of gaps in our health systems. I keep saying that I thank God we don't have many cases here, because if we did have as many cases as maybe Europe, I do not know what will happen to victims of COVID in Zambia. So I hope that at the end of COVID, we'll all learn as a people, our government, first of all, they'll seriously look at the situation and audit themselves, not politically, because I feel like sometimes I don't know about other governments, but African governments, we like to politicize everything. So I hope that at the end of it, or even during throughout the whole situation, they'll be able to audit themselves and they'll be able to look at the interest of the people that they are serving as well. So at the end of it, I hope we all come back as Zambians, as Africans, as everyone who's been affected, because it's a global thing, and just look at, just audit ourselves, our health systems, our like you said, socio-economic justices. Yeah, so I hope that that's the lesson we take out from this.
Yeah, amen and amen. Well, I want to appreciate everyone who joined us in this call. I think the fact that you all took an hour out of your very busy day and very stressful times to join us in this conversation means the world to us. And so even you showing up and being present in this way is a huge support to us. Other ways that you can support the work that Freely in Hope does is just staying involved in our newsletters. I'm trying to send out more newsletters to let all of our donors and our supporters know what's happening on the ground, so that you can both pray for us and also so you can support us in the ways where we need help. In terms of funding support for our COVID response for all of our girls, you'll get an email in a couple of weeks about that matching grant. And so just stay tuned. And also every week, join us through our other live webinars that we'll be having. So next week, we'll be talking with Lydia, our program manager in Kenya, on how sheltering at home may not be safe and how we're responding to that, and some other issues that we're experiencing as related to sexual and domestic violence, and how we can all as a global community work to support other survivors during this time. So for wherever you are, whether you're in Kenya, Zambia, Long Beach, New York, Zimbabwe, California, San Francisco, San Mateo, Nairobi. Yes. Our hope is that you can experience peace and joy in the unexpected places, especially during these hard places, and that you may also continue to hold a non-anxious presence within yourself, so that in the communities that you lead, that you will be able to experience a new sense of transformation for yourself as well. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you same time next week right here on Zoom. Bye.